lot of the couples finance content is about the basic things like how to split bills. But how do you actually manage money as an ambitious couple, as one that wants to achieve great things together, but also enjoy the little luxuries in life without feeling micromanaged by each other?
We are going to have a candid conversation as a couple who have been together and worked together for over 10 years now and share what's really worked for us. We started dating and our first business together at the same time. So money has always been a big part of our conversations.
We actually invested about $1,500 each right out the gate to hire designers to build this brand that we had in mind. So it's safe to say if you start your relationship with something like that, it takes a lot of trust from the beginning and a lot of communication around money.
And today we almost have over $2 million invested, both self-employed, left our full-time jobs, and had quite a few pivots along the way.
I think when it comes to managing money as an ambitious couple, there's really 3 elements that you need. You need the independence, because it's going to give you that feeling of autonomy, just the true independence that you've probably always been craving. You need support. So when you do have those big ambitious goals, you need to feel like someone's in your corner, someone's willing to pivot with you or step in when you need maybe someone to take the baton, relay race style. And thirdly, you need that unity. You need to feel like you're aligned on the goals. You need to feel like you're on the same page. And that's really going to allow you to get there faster and in a much more enjoyable way.
One of the things we learned early on is money personalities. We realized that there's a ton of different money personalities out there and everyone is different. For example, Mal is a little bit more cautious versus I'm a lot more risky. We always joke about this. Mal needs about 30K in the bank account to make a big move versus I might have only $1.79 and I'm still ready to make that same move. So it just goes to show that everyone has different money personalities. You just have to learn your partner's money personalities, but also your own, so that you can act accordingly and that you can both go off of your strengths and weaknesses.
So inherently, you might think that it's better if your partner has a similar money personality to you. I feel like that's something actually that I find men tend to crave more. They want a partner that feels really risky as well and are willing to take the leap with them. And I actually think that having the differences can really balance each other out nicely. So for example, Josh just kind of wants to run with no parachute and jump off the cliff, and I want to spend 2 years building the parachute first. So it helps us kind of land in the middle where it's like, okay, well, let's at least grab this quick parachute as we jump off. And so they can be really complementary. So I think if you are someone where you're not sure where you and your partner land, it's important to have that conversation. If you are on opposite ends, it's about looking at how can you make these really complementary of each other instead of just having them be something that makes you butt heads and gets really frustrating. How can you leverage the strengths of each side? And then if you're actually a couple where you feel like you do have the same money personalities, I challenge you to look at how can you add other systems or infrastructure that can help balance it out? Because if you're both super high risk, you might spend your whole life, dumping a lot of money into a project, it not working out, and you don't have the same safeguards as you do when somebody's there saying like, hey, what if we had this emergency fund, or what if we only invested this portion? So see what kind of safeguards you need if you're both on that same side. Some of the conversations that we find are really important that you should be able to answer for both yourself and your partner would be like, what scares you or them, right? What motivates you? Some people are motivated by fear, some people are paralyzed by it, so there might be some overlap in those answers. What feels safe or unsafe? What is your risk tolerance? And understanding how you were raised. So that's going to be both your perspective on money and maybe your relationship with money, how you make those money moves, what you need in order to answer all those questions. So I think you should be able to answer all of these for yourself and for each other. So we talked about what's really had the most impact in how we approach our money together, but now let's look at what that actually practically looks like when it comes to managing our money together.
So for our personal spending, we spend our own money however we choose. As long as it's under $1,000, we really don't ask that many questions. Our joint expenses, any of the big expenses like rent or groceries, we always have been splitting down the middle. But those one-off expenses like dinners or treating each other to coffees, we tend to go back and forth between who is splitting that bill or paying that bill. And then we realize that our personal spending just got bigger and bigger. So just to keep it simple and everything in one spot, we now have a joint credit card where we put any of those little joint expenses on. So at the end of the month, we know exactly how much we're paying because we just split it down the middle.
Yeah, and so logistically, what this looks like, if you were to look at the back end of our accounts, is that we keep our own money separate. We both have separate bank accounts, and then we just have one joint bank account that is really for all of our mortgages, property tax, home bills, anything like that for our rental properties, as well as any of our own existing home bills. And then when it comes to that joint credit card, we both have our own personal credit cards, and then we have that one joint credit card. And basically at the end of the month, it's not actually technically a joint account or anything on paper. It's just an Amex under his name, and he sends me an email once a month that lets me know the spending. It's also been a really great way for us to reflect by having it all on that one card. It makes us a little more cognizant of like, oh wow, we spent that much on ordering food this month. And so having that all compiled in one spot has really helped us just eyeball if we want to reduce for the next month or not. For us, this has been a really simple way to keep our money separate but come together where it matters and not feel like you're micromanaged or going to be judged for what you spend money on. I don't really think either of us would do that anyways, but it is nice to just know we can spend that personal money as we want. We still treat each other here and there as we want, but then that joint system really lets us come together in a streamlined way without overcomplicating whose income is going into what account. It's just separate and we come together to pay those joint bills. Now, obviously having a system to manage your money is important, but I think when we're really looking at couples who want to get rich together, build legacy together, whatever it might be, what's really important is how you approach investments and goals and figuring out which one of these do you do together. Are there some things that you're just doing totally independent? And what happens when maybe you have conflicting goals or priorities when it comes to investing?
So we have joint goals for investing, but we execute them pretty differently. For me, I'm more lump sums, so I'll do it when I get a good closing or have a really good month. And for Mal, she likes setting up her auto investments every single month, so at least when she starts in the beginning of the year, she knows at a minimum how much she's investing by the end of the year because of those monthly investments. And then she'll throw in some lump sums after a successful launch or after securing a new brand deal or something like that. So that's kind of how we have similar goals, but then we execute them slightly differently.
Let's say we want to invest 100K this year. That's going to be the goal we set together. And then we might have a conversation on whether it's realistic for both of us to be able to do 50K, if one does 60, if one does 40. And once we kind of nail that tentative plan, it's really up to ourselves of how we get there. So I didn't really realize that until we started like talking about this video, that really is something that I think is unique. Is we say, hey, we've got this joint goal together, but we give each other the space to approach it in the best way, where basically like, how can you put your best foot forward? Not to pull a sports analogy, but I almost feel like it's the same of like, you're not gonna make LeBron necessarily change his training or his physio to be the same as somebody else because they know that like they might have to do their own way of getting to the same goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, crushed it.
Little sports analogy. Now, in these scenarios, obviously our personal goals are just really complementing those joint goals, which is honestly what happens most of the time. But we should probably talk about what to do when the personal goals conflict with the shared goals.
Like my bike.
Just such an easy example.
I have a big bike race this year and I wanted a new bike. And the one I was eyeing is $5,000. And when we had the conversation, I think Mal was like, okay, maybe you can get a new bike, but not necessarily a 5K bike. And at first I was like, oh, I really want my bike. But then when I thought about it, I realized how much further the additional funds could go if we invested it. And at the same time, it's almost 2 months of payroll. right? So when I broke it down like that, when we had the conversations, it helped me realize how that personal want, that personal goal might be a little bit too selfish, and that we have to think of the bigger goal at play. But at the end of the day, I got a newer bike, not quite 5K, but enough to make me feel happy, and we're still on track for our goals.
In this example being a spending goal, conflicts with our bigger goals. One thing I love is having that direct income path for it. So in Josh's example, if he goes and makes extra home sales or ups that revenue in his business, maybe gets some brand deals, whatever it might be, he's essentially creating new income that can then cover that. So it's no longer a problem because it's almost like you just went and got that 5K out of thin air, not thin air, but you know what I mean. It's like you went and resourced an extra 5K. So now that gives you that allowance that's not going to affect things. And that can be really motivating because then you essentially get to have your cake and eat it too, because
True.
we still get to hit those joint investment goals, but you still get a bike.
Mm-hmm.
I think another way that your personal goals can conflict with the joint goals is if one of you wants to invest in different investment channels than the other. So the same way we said, like any personal spend over $1,000 is a conversation. I would say when it comes to investing, any investment over 5K is a conversation. So if you want to buy a specific stock, if you want to add a little to crypto, anything like that under 5K, I feel like falls into that personal spend territory. But once we get above 5K, okay, now you are kind of playing with more impactful money. If you're putting 10K into something without having that conversation, it might feel a little bit blindsided when the other person finds out. So as you can see, when it comes to everything, we really have this like independent and then team together mentality. And so you see it with our spending, having our own money, and then a few joint things. And then also with our goals, it really is those bigger goals are our joint ones. But even when we set those separate personal ones, like I still want him to be able to buy the bike. I just want to do it in a way that makes sense, right? And if I have a big goal in my business or even in my own personal investments that I want to achieve, he's always really big cheering me on. And I think that's the big thing is you can still be so supportive in helping kind of clear the path for each other to accomplish those individual goals. And then it really just unites you even more for the joint goals.
And again, it's bringing it back to the money personalities in the beginning. Mal knows my money personality and I know hers, and it's just another filter to help you not make the wrong decision. I know I'm impulsive, so that 5K bike, if I was maybe single, I would have just bought it and then a month later totally regretted it. But I think it just helps have that second brain to just talk it through with you.
Yeah, it's not just about understanding each other's money personalities, it's also about helping each other grow and work through them. And I think that's a really important part is I have learned to be less cautious. I have learned to lower my safety net or to see alternative options as kind of backup plans instead of always cash being the solution. And I think on the flip, I've helped Josh reflect more before making those impulse calls.
Comes down to is having that shared joint vision, what that bigger picture is, because ultimately all the decisions lead towards achieving that bigger goal.
Yeah, and I feel like when you have that joint vision together, it makes all of the conversations that follow easier, because when you look at how you want to manage the spending money, when you look at how you want to set those investment goals or those entrepreneurial goals, it really can come back to how does this get us towards that big vision? And if not, if it conflicts with it, like, are we both okay with that? Is that like a side quest detour we do want to take because it's important for other reasons? But I think a big part with the vision too is that we've built this joint vision together. And I think that's really important because I think often one partner maybe has this vision and they might be struggling to communicate it in a way that it resonates with their partner and they feel like they just want to get the partner on board. Whereas if you can really build that vision together, build in elements that both of you enjoy and get excited about, it makes it so much easier to go further, faster, and stay on the same page.
And how you execute on that bigger vision is communication. I think communication is super key. And what we realized is a lot of our money conflicts actually don't come from mistakes. They just come from lack of communication. Mainly on my part, but
I wasn't going to say
that's what it comes from, right?
You can work anything out together and it's so much easier to solve anything that's going on if you're transparent about it and you communicate. I think you're allowed to change your mind on the goals you want. You're allowed to decide that something else is now a priority. Anything in between like that, like you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to feel different about something. But I think if you have those constant check-ins with the big vision, with the paths you guys are taking to get there, it just creates this open environment to say, well, hey, what if we did it differently? Or, hey, I was really thinking that I would like to, start saving for a bike, let's say, and you can have that open communication. You can adjust the plan and it's not a big problem versus someone saying like, I went and bought this bike because it's my money and I do what I want. That's obviously going to cause some conflict.
And oftentimes we found that communication leads to solutions or even really creative solutions that one person might not have been able to think of themselves, but because we bounce ideas off of each other, we come up with some really creative solutions. And that's why we look forward to our money conversations every single month, where we run through our net worth, we update all of our assets, we update each other on how our businesses are doing, how we're feeling within our business. And it's just an honest conversation, just so both of us know where each other's at so that we could help each other.
Yeah, and it almost always sparks a new idea of a business idea or an investment opportunity. And I think we all know that inherently money is emotional. Money is a trigger in so many ways. So if you can communicate above all else, it avoids that feeling of blindsided or making your partner feel unsafe with their money, or you don't want to create a lack of trust or anything like that. So that's why, like, no matter what, even if it's something where you're like, it's too late, I've made the mistake, communicating the mistake is still communication. And it means that in the future, you can get to a place where you're communicating before making those mistakes. So I feel like that's really what's made it for us. That's what's been the game changer in managing our money. You could spend all the time in the world talking about how many savings or checking accounts, but it's really about how you're approaching the conversation of money together and ultimately what you're building together.